Welcome to the info session for the Investigative Reporting Program at UC Berkeley Journalism. I'm Bernice Young. I'm the managing editor of the IRP, and I'm looking forward to speaking with all of you today to share a little bit about what we do and how we do it at the IRP. Just a little bit of a layout here of what we're going to talk about. First of all, we're going to meet the IRP team, who you can see here shortly. Then we'll give you a quick overview of the IRP, how to get involved, and then what we think the advantages are of being part of the investigative reporting program. And then we're going to do a Q&A with one of our superstar alums, Katie Roosh from the class of 2020. We actually have a lot of superstar alums here at this table, but today we're going to feature Katie, and we'll hear from some others here at the table. So first off, I thought it'd be great for everyone to meet this fabulous team. If everyone just introduce yourself and say a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a reporter at the IRP. I work on the child welfare beat.
We have to use the
Oh,
mic.
sorry.
For the virtual.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Hello, I'm Catherine. I'm a reporter at the IRP, and I work on the child welfare team.
Hi, I'm Sasha Schell. I help to teach the open source investigations class with David Barstow.
Hi, I'm Kate Raphael. I am a reporter at the IRP, also on the Child Welfare Project, and a recent alum, graduated this past spring.
Hi, I'm Lisa Pickoff-White. I'm a co-founder of the California Reporting Project, where we are collecting and extracting data about police violence and misconduct.
Hi, I'm Christine Shivo. I'm the local news editor. I am responsible for Oakland North and Richmond Confidential, and I teach local news, investigative and enterprise reporting.
My name is Garrett Thoroff. I'm a reporter and editor here at the IRP, and I was a newspaper reporter for a long time before that.
Hi, I'm Aisha Pettigrew, and I'm the Director of Operations, so I handle the administrative side of the IRP.
Hi again, I'm Bernice Young. I'm the managing editor. I work with students on their projects and also do some of my own reporting.
And I'm David Barstow, and I'm chair of the investigative reporting program at Berkeley Journalism and editor of the investigative reporting program that in this amazing group of folks that you're seeing right here. Should we segue to the next part of this? Yes, okay. So I want to just tell you quickly about what we're ultimately trying to do through the investigative reporting program. And we describe it, I think, pretty well through our mission and our vision. And our mission is to try to build a world where investigative journalism is open to anyone with persistence, curiosity, and integrity. And our vision is to throw open the doors of investigative reporting, inviting new voices to expose injustice through ambitious investigations executed at the highest standard. And so let me maybe put that in more direct terms in terms of how I think we all think about what we're trying to do in the investigative reporting program. First and foremost, we're trying to create a space that challenges our students to conceive and execute investigations of their own. We believe deeply that the best way for you to learn about investigative reporting and to decide whether this is the kind of reporting that you want to devote yourselves to is to give you the opportunity to actually do the work yourself and have ownership and agency over that work. So that means what we're doing is we're going to provide an incredible amount of support. We're going to provide editing support. We're going to provide mentoring support. If you need lawyers to help you fight for things, we're going to provide legal support. If we need money to go out and report, or to go take a trip, to go interview somebody, to purchase public records, we're going to do our best to make that available to you. And then when you get done with your project, we're going to do everything we can to help you get it published in the best possible platform that we can find for your particular story that hits the right audience for your story. We are completely agnostic about the type of story. We do print stories, we do audio stories, we do doc stories, we do multimedia stories. What we care passionately about is making the investigative reporting program the single best place in the world to learn the craft of investigative reporting. Because, as I'm sure you all know by now, it is very difficult in today's media environment to find a space and to find the time to actually learn how to do investigative reporting and do it at the highest possible level. So that's what we're about. That's what this mission and vision stands for. Oh, how we do it. Oh, this is great. Maybe that you just described it way better than I could here, but that actually captures a lot of what I just talked about. One of the things that I think we all emphasize is that the investigative reporting that our students are actually producing and have produced for years now at the investigative reporting program, this is not beginner investigative reporting. It's not junior varsity investigative reporting. We want you to produce investigative reporting that can stand toe-to-toe with the very best investigative reporting being done anywhere in this country. And so a student of ours this last year just won the Polk Award, which is the second highest award you can win of all of journalism. Other report, one of them sitting right down at the end, Catherine Hurd, won a Polk Award a couple of years ago for another project that we did, a documentary we did with Frontline. And so one of the things that you're going to hear about today in the presentations is you're going to hear about all of the efforts we're putting into helping you not just fall in love with investigative reporting, but learn how to do it in the strongest, most impactful possible way, which I know is a question I think that we're all kind of wrestling with right now, is the question of how do we make our work as relevant as possible in the current environment that we confront, and how do we make our work really make a difference, have impact? And that's something that we just focus on obsessively through the Investigative Reporting Project. And one last thing, and I'm going to shut up, which is the reason why the Investigative Reporting Program has been able to be so successful is not just because of the efforts of all of this crowd here, but for a very specific reason, which is Berkeley Journalism is a 2-year program. And that 2-year program is essential to helping people actually give them the time and the space to really learn how to do investigative reporting and do it well. It is incredibly difficult to learn how to do this work over the course of a single year. It's the 2 years that gives us the length of runway that you need to actually learn the various reporting techniques and storytelling techniques that are essential to doing this work at the highest possible level. So I just wanted to make that one last, that one little pitch about what sets us apart.
Thanks so much, David. I think you can hear from his voice the passion that he brings to investigative reporting and to the classroom, and so it's always really exciting to work with David. Just to emphasize, I'm sorry the slides aren't working at the moment, but in a moment, hopefully you'll get a QR code that you can use to check out some of the stories that we've done. Here we go. Just to emphasize, we really believe that students learn by doing. And one of our goals at the IRP and at Berkeley Journalism generally is to make sure that students leave here with really solid clips. Clips are currency in the journalism business. It's how you get jobs. It's how you continue on in your career. And it's really a goal of ours at the IRP to really support students in generating, kind of conceiving of, executing on, and publishing really high-impact, ambitious stories. I'm proud to say that we've published dozens of stories in the last year alone. You can see a handful of them on the slide there. Check out the QR code. They get published in the LA Times, the Washington Post, the San Francisco Chronicle. Stories range from how campaign funds and charitable donations have helped Big Oil wield power in Sacramento, how pediatric guidelines for treating obesity could actually be fueling eating disorders. That's a story that Kate Raphael over there, third from the end there, worked on this past year, and how the state of California has mishandled a reparations program for survivors of prison sterilization. We've also contributed to reporting for PBS Frontline documentaries, as Catherine has, and won the Polk Award. We've done Reveal radio episodes. So as David said, we're really medium agnostic. We'll work across any platform. The important point is that we're doing investigative reporting. The other point I wanted to raise is that all of us here are practicing journalists. And I think that's actually really important. We're practicing editors or reporters. We bring our practice to our work with students. We bring our contacts, and we bring our continued professional growth. So as this industry is changing, as we're confronting new conditions, as David mentioned, nationally, politically, otherwise, we're there in the trenches with all of you. I also wanted to David had mentioned this alum, Brian Howie, who won a George Polk Award last year. And I also want to underscore that the IRP is really powerful in the way that it provides editorial support and time, and a lot of guidance from this whole team here. We spend hundreds of hours every semester working directly one-on-one or in small groups with students so that you can execute on your story. Brian Howie, that's how Brian Howie, thanks to some really careful guidance from David, was able to execute on an incredible investigation that ran in the LA Times and also Reveal, the investigative podcast. His story that won him this Polk Award was about a company called Lexapol, which trains law enforcement in California to engage in a deceptive practice that protects them from liability. So basically, after a police shooting that results in a death, Lexapol taught California police officers how to interview a deceased person's family to try to pull out as much negative information about them as possible. And they wouldn't even tell their loved ones that somebody had died. And then they would use this information to shield them from wrongful death lawsuits. So you can see kind of the power and the ambition of the types of stories that come out of the IRP and IRP students in particular. So to me, Brian, Katie, Kate, Catherine, so many of the others, Sasha, all these alums that we have sitting here are really great examples of the incredible work that comes out of the IRP. So our goal is really to make the IRP as accessible to Berkeley journalism students as much as possible. So I'm going to pass it off to the rest of the staff here to talk a little bit about how you can get involved with the IRP once you're a student here.
So one way is through courses that David mostly teaches and Sasha teaches, one with David, beginning with your second semester in your first year. So in the first semester, everyone takes J200, which is a foundational course. It prepares you really for anything else that you're going to do here. And in the second semester, you have the opportunity to take the Introduction to Investigative Reporting. In that class, you work with David as the instructor and all of us assisting to develop an investigative story idea, which ends in a pitch that you present at the end of the semester. It really does take the whole semester to develop a strong pitch, and that involves a lot of reporting, a lot of interviewing, a lot of document searches, a lot of reading. And after that, there's a competitive process based on the best pitches that will lead to students being selected for what David calls the blockbuster investigative class. And it begins immediately. It begins in the summer. Often students are teamed up. They may be they may do this as a pair. And they spend the entire second year developing their investigation. Many students use it for their thesis project. At the end, they have, something, a story, a tangible story. Oftentimes, students have to travel, and we support that. Journalism school does. And there's also the OSINT class that you've heard referenced, which Sasha and David teach along with Alexa Koenig from the Human Rights Center. There's a lot of partnership between the Human Rights Center here on campus and the Investigative Reporting Program. And this is open source investigations. Perhaps Sasha's going to talk more about that, so I won't. And then there's a tangential course called Local Enterprise and Investigative Reporting, which I teach, and that involves the shorter kind of investigations that you often do at local news outlets, where the enterprise story that just takes a few weeks, or the investigation that might just take a few months. So next slide, please.
So hi, I'm Sasha. I help to teach the open source investigations class, also colloquially known as the OSINT class. So this is a class that's a collaboration with the Human Rights Center at the law school. It's a class where we teach a lot of digital investigative techniques. So this is probably the most visible version of this is the New York Times Visual Investigations Unit that does all these kind of very sexy online sleuthing and verification methodologies. So what we do in this class is the entire class is the investigations team for a single project. And together we combine traditional investigative reporting methods with these newer digital investigation methods to tell the maximum story that we can. It is open to first-year students starting in your second semester to apply to join, and then it's open to all second-year students. And I encourage you all to have a look at some of these. These are some of the stories that we have produced in the past that you can find online. And we have a couple projects about the Brazilian Amazon and violence against traditional peoples there that are kind of upcoming. So we can cover a very broad swath of topics and investigate things in faraway places because a lot of our work is based online. So hope you all are interested.
Hi, I'm Lisa. I'm with the California Reporting Project, which I get to work on with Katie and also with reporters all over the state. So the California Reporting Project was formed in 2018 when state law changed, allowing reporters and anyone really to request for the first time records about police violence and sustained misconduct of certain types in California. And so about 40 newsrooms came together, and these are newsrooms that are like two-person newsrooms, like out in the Inland Empire and public radio stations to the LA Times. So it's a real variety of people from Fresno land to like KAZU working together. And so since then, we've collected 7.5 terabytes of records and counting. So we are a big data project. And what is really exciting is that you get to work with me, reporters, but also engineers at Berkeley and Stanford, where we're using LLMs and other techniques to extract information from these records, and then really look at how do we do these kinds of large-scale data reporting. I also just want to say I am a Berkeley alum, and I came here, and I really discovered investigative reporting through Berkeley, where I had a chance to work on the Chauncey Bailey project and to really see what it was like to work on a big investigation. And I think this project, where we work with like 5 students sometimes over the summer or more, really gives people a chance to like actively work. And I think that's really one of the great things about IRP. I'll pass to Garrett.
So I'm Garrett again, and I think I'm supposed to talk to you about like what it's like to work alongside you throughout this whole process. I mean, one of the things that is really distinctive about the investigative reporting program is that there's so many of us here, right? You know, I was at the IRE a couple years ago on a panel with folks who were educators in investigative reporting, and they're like, "How on earth do you get so many stories published? Like we don't have this bulk of stories," and it's really because of the manpower that you see here. In the beginning of a project, you'll have people working alongside you, and really you're not expected to have investigative experience coming into this, right? What you're expected to have is a commitment to integrity. What you're expected to have is like an intense curiosity, but you're not expected to necessarily know how to do like a confrontational interview or to process like a big or a big stack of documents. And in the beginning, we'll be like right there with you doing it because we have the time. And that's a lot of the work that I do. I'll work alongside students, kind of like in a player-coach type role. And it's been really successful. Some of the projects that I've done alongside students have run on the front page of the New York Times or the front page of the LA Times. And it's similar to what David was saying, it's really work at the highest level. I feel like I'm doing some of the best work of my career. And my partners, instead of having like really experienced investigative reporters, are people who bring like a completely different and priceless attribute, which is enthusiasm. Like, it's incredible to work alongside you guys as everything kind of clicks into place. So I think that like, if you get involved, you can work alongside any of us, and that's kind of the model that we try to carry out. So, Kate.
Perfect. So I'm one of the students who's gotten to work, well, I guess I'm not a student, but I started working with Garrett when I was a student in David's class, actually. So I've gotten to work with him in a couple different capacities, and he was my editor in developing that story that Bernice mentioned about the AAP. And then between my first and second years, he and Catherine brought me on to their child welfare project. So it's been very cool to get to, work with, I've worked with a number of different staff members at the IRP, but to just like immediately get this hands-on experience to start thinking about how to access hard-to-reach sources and do really rigorous records work, and also just kind of be developing this investigative mindset of like persistence and thinking creatively about how to get our hands on this information that is not easily accessible. So it's been really cool, and I've felt incredibly mentored here. So.
Awesome. Yeah. So I was supposed to talk about a story I worked on for the LA Times. Oh, there it is with Garrett. This was one of the pieces that I produced last year. It was about basically a process in which is pretty replicable at the IRP and gives an example of the type of work we do here. So I was also a student. I graduated in 2021, and I started working on the child welfare project shortly before I guess about a year before I graduated, and I've been working on it since. And this is one of the stories I produced last year, which was about a tip that came in through Garrett. So again, like they were saying, we really do rely on their network of sources, and they really do help us chase down stories and give us ideas. And basically, we found out that a social worker had been assaulted at the Biltmore Hotel, and it was kind of a confusing lead at first. We didn't understand why a social worker was one-on-one with a foster youth in a hotel setting, and she was left battered and sexually assaulted. And basically, Garrett said, go figure out what happened here, like what's the issue, and basically that led to a line of reporting that ended up revealing that the county had been illegally housing foster youth across different hotels in the city of Los Angeles, based on an overwhelming shortage of placements, speaking to a much broader state issue of a move away from congregate care and the shutting down of group homes, et cetera. That was basically placing foster youth and social workers at risk by putting them, illegally in hotel rooms across the city. And so the product of that work ended up on the front page of the New York Times, or excuse me, not the New York Times, the LA Times. And there was also a follow-up story that kind of I got to work on as well, which kind of talked about the root of the problem. And just, the foster care shortage. So it's a good example of what we get to work on as reporters here. And now I'm passing it to somebody else, I believe.
All right. So those are some ways that you can get involved with the investigative reporting program. Another way is to apply for a paid internship. So the IRP hires or places Berkeley journalism students in paid internships in a variety of settings during the academic year and the summer session. It hires student reporters to work alongside seasoned journalists at top newsrooms like KQED and the Washington Post. And the IRP also supports student reporters as they develop expertise in aging in America on a project that Christine and I work on by producing stories that are published in outlets like USA Today, Grist, and Public Radio International's The World podcast. You could also come to one of our events. We have skill building workshops during lunch that you can attend as a student. We also offer events like we're doing one this Friday where Katie will be talking about her story. And we host the Logan Symposium on investigative reporting, and students have an opportunity to come to that. And then the last way is that you can just come hang out with us at the office. Even if you aren't in an IRP taught class or working as a student reporter, students are always welcome to come hang out at the IRP office. Our staff of seasoned reporters and editors are here to talk about stories and offer reporting advice, and we always have coffee. We usually have snacks. It's a good time. And where do our alumni end up? In the last 2 years alone, Alumni have gone directly from the IRP to the Los Angeles Times, the Dallas Morning News, the Arizona Republic, the Miami Herald, the New Bedford Light, the Sacramento Bee, CNN International, Bloomberg, and Mission Local, among others. And as you can see, a lot of our alumni stay here too.
Thanks, everyone. So we also, as I mentioned, wanted to talk a little bit about what we perceive to be kind of the advantage of the investigative reporting program and coming and working with us. We have a colleague named Yasmin who unfortunately wasn't able to join us, but it's for a great reason. She's out reporting. And she did this really interesting project where she surveyed all of the other investigative reporting programs at journalism schools across the country and identified the ways in which we really stand out. And so we're going to go through some of those one by one. So one of them, the first one, is bylines, not taglines. So as we've been talking about throughout this entire presentation, we really believe that you, the students at the IRP, are totally capable of executing on a story of your own conception that you feel passionate about and that is ambitious. Of course, you know, with a lot of support in terms of our time and our guidance and also resources for reporting. But it's a really important quality of the investigative reporting program that it's the student reporters that are producing their own signature investigative pieces, and they take full ownership and credit for it from beginning to end. So next, I think, is Garrett.
So I'll talk about time. You know, one of my favorite things is hearing investigative reporters talk about like a metaphor for their work. And, you know, you'll hear people talk about like, well, it's like jumping into an ocean that I've never seen, or it's like getting locked in a box and being like Houdini to get yourself out. Like, you know, from the tip that Catherine got about like this situation to actually getting published. And, you know, like getting that like final source that you need for like the critical piece of information, or waiting for the public records requests that never come like within a suitable amount of time. It all takes time, and that's why I think that like the one-year programs very rarely are able to produce like these big investigations, but with 2 years you can.
And we also offer financial support. Aisha mentioned the internships and the fact that we provide money for travel as well. And for example, we had a story through our Aging in America project that just came out. It was not investigative. Those stories are more enterprise than investigation. That just came out this week in the Washington Post. And it was about a buddy system where young vets team up with old vets who need support, and they actually do things for them that enable the older vet to stay in their home, like make their home more accessible, for example, or just be someone who runs errands for them. And so we sent a reporter to Virginia. That's where the program was. And, you know, throughout the reporting, we support the travel that's often required for you to get a story. Who's next? Sasha.
Yeah, so I think I'm here to talk about some mentorship. I think I have been, I only graduated from the journalism school last spring, and I've been really the beneficiary of some incredible mentorship at the IRP. I came to this school knowing that I wanted to pursue investigative reporting, specifically open source investigative reporting, or OSINT, and I worked very closely for almost 2 years with a reporter who used to work at the IRP, Isela Perez de Acha, and all of my projects were done with her. And we developed incredible trust that allowed us to really push the project forward, but allowed me to really learn in a deep, deep way how to conduct this sort of work and all these new skills and methodologies. At the same time, we worked incredibly closely with David Barstow, our fearless and dear leader. He is a wealth and bank of knowledge unlike anybody I have ever worked with in my life. I think Yasmin, who is not here, she and I have often discussed how, you know, there's a lot of advice that we get from a lot of different places, but a lot of the time, David's advice really cuts to the center of things. And we are incredibly lucky at the IRP to be surrounded by so many well-seasoned reporters who are also so willing to give their time to students in a way that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. This is not some academic institution where you are disconnected from the world. Everybody who works here is deeply, deeply connected to reporting in real time every day. And the fact that we have, as students, or had, I should say, any sort of exposure to their archive of knowledge is a blessing that I can't quite fully quantify. But I suppose I am where I am because I received that, and I'm eternally grateful. And I hope that you also can benefit.
Yeah, and going off of what Sasha just said, we do offer like a full roster of courses that are dedicated to investigative reporting. So as Christine said earlier, there's Intro to Investigative Reporting, and then there's Developing Your Blockbuster Story and David's Blockbuster class, as we discussed at length. And then like what Sasha teaches, which is the open source investigations. We're trying to mimic a lot of what they're doing in actual newsrooms, such as the New York Times. And when we have our big events, we are kind of mimicking a lot of these great strategies that they're using and teaching students how to use them. And we talked earlier about a documentary I worked on that won a Polk Award. We were using a lot of those tools early on when I was a student, and now we've developed an entire class out of it, thanks to Isella, who Sasha just mentioned, and now Sasha, who's co-teaching the course. So we have a lot of great classes that allow people to actually come in and learn how to do these things. Like David said earlier, you're not expected to come in and know. You're expected to come in with enthusiasm, and if you're dedicated to learning the craft, it's available to you.
The next one is an esteemed track record. Our student reporters, publish in some of the best national and local outlets in the country, New York Times, ProPublica, and on and on and on. They're award-winning. But also we really pride ourselves in placing stories in the places where they need to be read. So just as one example, Christine worked with a student on a story about how Chevron, the oil and gas company, creates websites that appear like news sites but don't reveal the actual source of funding and who's actually behind them. The story was published in a nonprofit called Floodlight, but it was also published in Louisiana Illuminator, Texas Climate News, Santa Fe New Mexican, and the Taos News, because those are the communities of the Permian Basin that were most affected by this story. So, when we say we have an esteemed track record, I think it also means that, people trust our work, and regardless of the outlet, they're really open to taking our stories.
Yeah. And we're also, like Sasha mentioned, really using new tools. I think there's a lot of talk about AI right now. What does AI mean in journalism? And we are actually setting, I had a meeting right before this, but setting evaluation criteria for a summary. How do we actually decide that this is true and accurate? How are we measuring this on a real project right now? And at the California Reporting Project, for instance, we work with a significant number of interns who get to work with us, but then also get to take these techniques and skills into their own reporting as they progress throughout the year, for instance. Yes.
Cool. Another cool thing that happens right here at Berkeley is the IRP hosts the Logan Symposium, which brings together some top investigative journalists really from around the world. And there are panels and workshops and a bunch of presentations and just opportunities for networking. I attended both years that I was a student for free, just got to sit in the audience, talk to a bunch of people, and also participated in a mentorship program where I got paired with a more experienced investigative reporter. She was actually an alum working on health investigative stories, which is something I've been interested in. And just really people who want to develop this relationship with current students to continue it once, as you launch into your career. And that happens just right here and is totally available to us.
And the last thing is that we seek ways of doing investigative journalism that promote resilience and psychological well-being. We're really committed to helping you all do this for the long haul, and that means that we do all sorts of things to support psychosocial well-being, including, I know Lisa has all of the students on the California Reporting Project take a training with the DART Center, specifically on trauma and journalism, and we just create a climate where we hope you'll come to us and talk about not just how your investigation is going, but also how you're doing.
So that's the IRP Advantage in a nutshell. And kind of as promised, we wanted to give you an opportunity to hear from Katie Roosh. Katie's down in LA, so couldn't be with us here in person today, but we definitely want to hear from her. So Katie was from the class of 2020, And she recently published a truly incredible two-part story about a secret system that covers up police misconduct in California, which basically allows these errant law enforcement officials to be rehired in other police departments. And on top of that, some of them even get disability pensions from the state in the process. So we thought it'd be really great for all of you to hear from Katie about her experiences with the IRP and how she was able to develop this story, beginning as a student at the IRP and her journey to publication. So, Katie, can you introduce yourself and tell us your full title? I can never remember the whole length of it.
I think it's a working title. Can you guys hear me?
Yep. Yeah. Loud and
Okay,
clear.
great. Love it. I'm Katie Roosh. I am a reporter here at the IRP. I'm also the records request manager for the California Reporting Project. I work with Lisa on the several thousand public records requests we have out to all the agencies across California, collecting all the data that we use the AI on. So that is me.
So, Katie, tell us a little bit about kind of the backstory. How did you get the idea for this story that ran in the Chronicle recently?
It's a very IRP story. I was working on a story with a pair of IRP reporters at the time. I had been brought in to work on their investigation, and I was looking at a group of police officers who had been fired from one agency and all ended up at a different agency. And when we started doing some of this reporting, we came upon a mystery. And that was that all of these officers, we had kind of documented how they had been fired. We had documented it through records and interviews. But when we talked to the officers, they said, no, we hadn't been fired. And so we're like, okay, what's going on here? And one of my fellow students cleverly, we kind of mapped everything out, and she cleverly discovered a through line with all of these police officers that all of them had filed suit against their former department and had settlement agreements with their former department. And that's really where the story started. So we requested those agreements, and that's how we ended up finding the investigation, was through this other reporting project.
When was the aha moment, though, that you realized that there was something untoward happening?
When we got the agreements. It was one of those days that I think I'll always remember. It was a simple public records request to a police department where we requested standard settlement agreements. And I got these agreements. I don't think I looked at them for a couple of days, but then I was like sitting at night going over some records, which is kind of a habit that I have. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe what's in these. Because we were seeing within the agreements, there were these very specific and direct clauses that made sure that the misconduct that these officers were accused of would no longer exist in any of the records that existed at the department. And that was really startling to see. I couldn't sleep that night, obviously, because of it. But I think that was the moment where I thought, oh my gosh, like this is incredible. And I think the thing that really struck it for me, that made me think that this was something that was happening at a wider scale, was just how similar all the agreements were to one another. And that gave me a lot of confidence that we had something here.
So tell me a little bit about the kind of support you got from folks at the IRP to pursue this story.
I got all of the support that you mentioned. It really isn't just words. I got tangible support in funds to purchase many records. I have about 20 bankers boxes of paper files from courthouses and other agencies sitting in my garage. I got financial support to do reporting trips for years, actually. You guys supported me. We also got access to a legal team who really opened the door for me in understanding case law and challenging these agencies to get access to these secret records. And then I had the incredible support of the staff. I felt like I could always talk to someone about the reporting challenges, but also the writing challenges that we're always thinking about. I still kind of pinch myself that I got to talk to David Barstow as much as I did. So, but I think the other thing that you guys talked about is kind of the less tangible, but I think even more important to me was that I had found an organization that was confident that I could do this. They said, yes, this investigation is good. And yes, we believe in it enough that we're going to put our money where our mouth is, that we're going to put our time and invest in this. And that was really, really valuable. And I think really solidified for me that I could do this and that I could publish.
Thanks for that, Katie. I really do feel like that is such a powerful part of the IRP. I remember being a young reporter many, many years ago and just like feeling like knowing I could do it if only I were given the chance. And so it's been really exciting to see everyone just produce at such a high level. So what initially drew you to the IRP?
Oh, I'm an old school IRP groupie. What drew me to the IRP was actually watching Frontline PBS. I was one of those kids who only got 4 channels growing up. One of them was PBS, so Frontline was one of my favorite shows. And the IRP partners with Frontline, and I thought, wow, that's the kind, like, isn't that incredible work? That's the kind of work I want to do. So I was kind of always a long time IRP junkie from a young age.
What was did you take classes? Did you get an internship? What was the way that you kind of dipped your toe into the IRP pool?
I did a little bit of everything. So I took every class that was available, but I also just knocked on the door and just started spending time at the IRP. And I think that's one of the wonderful things. It's a great environment where you can just sit there and do your work and talk and ask questions. At the time that I was at the IRP, there wasn't as robust of a class schedule when I was there in 2020, but I would volunteer every Thursday night to work on stories. I would volunteer for any reporting project that anyone needed help with, and it ended up working out great for me.
Is it possible to say what the most important thing is that you've learned from working at the IRP?
Oh, there's so many things. But I think one of the things that I really learned, I came into the journalism school with a little bit of experience doing local reporting as a TV reporter. But I think what the IRP allowed me to do was kind of get over this hump of doing impactful stories at the local level, but doing something even more substantial. What the IRP does is it doesn't just let you answer the first or second question. It allows you to answer all of the questions that come after that, to allow you to write with this definitive clarity that I think is so powerful. And I think that's the most important thing that I've learned. I think that as an investigator, that's the kind of work I always wanted to produce, but I didn't know how to produce it. And so you get access to people like David and Bernice and Garrett and all these other great people you get to work with, and you can finally see, oh my gosh, I can do that kind of work. I can do this. And I think that's probably one of the most important things that I learned.
Okay, last question for you, Katie, and then we're going to open it up for questions. What advice do you have for this group? If they're thinking about investigative reporting, they don't know how to kind of take that first step, or they want to continue on developing their investigative skills. What would you suggest?
I would say don't be scared that everyone doesn't know 100% of what they're doing, but we do it anyways. And so you just have to start and you just have to try. The other thing I would say, though, which is a little more practical, is if you really want to do this, and this is what feeds you, and this is what makes you want to wake up in the morning, I would make sure you focus on that. The journalism school can have some distractions for other things that you can get involved with, which are great. But I think one of the best things that I did was really focused on what I wanted to do. And I think that's why I got the most out of my journalism experience at the J School.
Thank you so much, Katie. Congratulations on really a blockbuster story that came out of the blockbuster class.
Yes, it did.
So we'd love to hear from all of you. If you have questions, comments, we'd love to respond if we can. And if there are any from online world, we'd love to hear from you too. You can drop them in the chat, or if you are open to asking the question, please take yourself off of. Oh, great.
I just want to say thank you so much for this. This has been really incredible, and I can sense the passion in the room. I'm just wondering how And this might be I suppose, a deeper question, but how do you allow yourselves not to get emotionally involved in these stories, and what challenges can that bring?
Well, I definitely don't guard against getting emotionally involved. I think it's actually really important to get like emotionally involved, but you have to be kind of safe about it, right? So, you know, in general, like most of the stories I do have to do with child abuse and really horrible circumstances that folks inflict on each other. And, you know, so we put a lot of safeguards in place. You know, part of that safeguard is actually working in a team. There's a lot of research that shows that like carrying the burden together and talking about it is really like, it's as simple as that. That's like one of the most effective ways of staying emotionally sane throughout that whole process. It's also really important like to like not get absorbed in in like a horrible death case for 9 hours straight. Like you do need to like pull back, right? And so we talk about those types of techniques. But there's no denying that like this stuff can be tough, and getting like really emotionally attached to the good that journalism can bring is really like what pulls you through it, right? And makes you feel good, right? Because I think all of us here have like an incredibly abiding belief in like the healing power of journalism. And one of the things that I'd love, you know, I've had sources like actually like subscribe to the Columbia Journalism Review after going through the process. So it's like kind of cool when it's like healing for the sources as well, right? And the people that have gone through the story.
Thank you.
All right. Hi, I'm Andrew. Nice to meet you all. I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. Sunny Cleveland. No, I'm just kidding. It's not funny. But no, thank you all. I really appreciate you all welcoming all of us for this session, and super, super helpful as I navigate the whole application process. So my question was something you mentioned you offer like skill building workshops. If you could expand a little bit more about what those look like as far as like that opportunity and different skills you could expect to learn if one were to choose to go and join them.
We have offered workshops on how to file Public Records Act requests or Freedom of Information Act requests. We've done workshops on basically really targeted search to kind of get around all of the algorithms that limit kind of what you see when you're doing a standard Google search. We'll do a workshop on court records, for example, how to access them, the difference between the different databases that exist, you know, state versus federal. So some of the kind of really core foundational investigative reporting skills, or just reporting skills in general, usually they bubble up because we're hearing the same people, or we're hearing the same topics come up and up again and again, so then we'll pull something together. It can be as kind of formal as one of the lunchtime skill building workshops, or it could be something also where you know, we pull a bunch of people together because we just notice that everybody has the same question. So there are myriad ways that we can kind of impart these various skills to folks as they need them.
I'm wondering, like, often when you're doing investigations and they are things that shed light on like police misconduct or these really powerful figures, like how much you're like navigating, teaching, like both that you need to put yourself out there as a journalist and have like a web presence, but also be
Sorry, can you repeat that
Sure.
question? Sorry.
I guess my question is, how much is like journalist safety part of the conversation, especially when you're like trying to put yourself out there and kind of forge a career doing something, but also going after stories that make powerful people mad, and also whether that seems like it is changing amid like the incoming administration.
don't know if Katie wants to talk about, what you did. I know Garrett can also talk about some of the presentations he's made on reporter safety. Lisa also on.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things that we do is some really intense training for students and for ourselves on how to do reporting on demonstrations where there's the potential for violence. We've also have colleagues who have taught like digital security on how to keep yourself safe as you interact with the world online. And Lisa, you probably have some addition. You can probably speak more on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, or Katie too. I mean, I know Katie, you're getting what, like, I don't know, 20, you just had a story come out. So what, 20 to 30 people must be contacting you a day right now? Yeah, so I think we something I appreciated IRP is I think IRP, from what I have seen, I think practices what we call sometimes a threat model, really where every story needs a different type of security. And so what I've seen here, and I appreciate here is someone who very recently came from working at KQED and other outlets, is I think people here think about like, what do you need here, right? Like every different stories need different things.
I've also worked with students on creating a risk assessment plan. So that's something that's routine as you're going out into the field into a situation where you have questions about safety. It's basically reporting out the potential risk and figuring out mitigation strategies, figuring out a strategy for getting in touch with me or with others at the journalism school, other people that you would need to get in touch with, how we would get in touch with the consulate, law enforcement, et cetera. So there is we are quite methodical about thinking about risk and safety.
So we are, I was going to say we're at 3:03, and I want to be aware of time, but there is also a question in the chat. So I might just take that if you have time right now. Is IR part of the core program for everyone or specific to people focusing on IR?
Very happily, we are a program that maps on top of every other track at the school. So you can be in multimedia, you can be in narrative, you can be in radio, you can be in doc, or any other track that they invent between now and when you arrive. And you can take investigative reporting because we believe, as we've said, that we're media agnostic. We just believe in the power of accountability journalism.
Right, it's kind of like a follow-up on that one. So it's like the resiliency, the culture of resilience, like with the DART Center on Trauma, because I see a lot of stories you guys publish are so brilliant. I can't imagine how 2 years into this story would, how, the psychological impact it would have for a, student journalist who have nothing but enthusiasm. And so it's like, how do you protect your students from having those sort of impact, and what are some specific things that a faculty member who's not really from a psychological background to support students?
Lisa, do you want to talk about all the work you've been doing around CRP and some of that?
Yeah, I mean, actually something I want to talk about is something I've really learned. I'm really grateful, actually, for I feel like the last 20 years there's been in my career, I'm a little older, like there's been a lot more talk about what we do as journalists and how that impacts us. And I feel like even in the last decade, there's just been a huge change in how newsrooms are dealing with this. But something that I think is really important is witnessing something that's traumatic doesn't mean that you are traumatized. It means that you've seen something that's horrible, right? And we're all doing that all day. I mean, I use social media, God help me. But I turn on my phone and I'm like, cute dog, oh, dead kid. It's horrible. And so I think what really actually helps me, I actually recently have been really grateful for my job. I actually find that doing this work in some ways is protective because you feel like you are active and that you are working on something. And I think like Garrett and Katie and other people have mentioned, what I love about IRP right now is it's a collaborative team space. And like Garrett said, that really is protective. I think knowing with other people and feeling that you are moving forward in life is what keeps us as people together, right? We need reasons to have joy and to get up in the morning. And I find personally, I'm into journalism and I keep staying in journalism because I find this work meaningful. I'm really grateful for IRP because I feel like it gives me a chance to do that with colleagues who are also watching out for me. And it is hard. I have seen things that unfortunately I will probably think about that I wish I hadn't. But I actually do wish I had seen them because I got to do something about it. And I have, and I'm grateful because I think IRP and Berkeley is starting, and journalism as a whole is starting to better talk about making space for those feelings and how we have a sustainable program. Like honestly, 15 years ago when I went to journalism school, we were not talking about how is this sustainable, and we are now, and I think that's really great. I don't know if other people want to answer that. Or if you felt like that answered your question. I hope it wasn't a non-answer. But
I think that, as everyone's been saying, there is something very important about being able to talk about the very difficult things that you're encountering on a regular basis in the reporting. It's something about holding it in and not having a release valve that makes it really difficult to sit with. And I think because you have editors here, you have colleagues here, you have other IRP staff, you have other colleagues, we try to create an environment where there is space to kind of talk that stuff out and just kind of release that pressure valve a little bit. And then as Lisa is saying, you do start to learn how to compartmentalize a little bit. I mean, it's perhaps a good and a bad thing that all of us here have learned how to compartmentalize some of this material because it's important for us to be able to kind of continue on every day looking at hard stuff. But the reason we're able to compartmentalize it, I think, it speaks to what Lisa was talking about. It's because we're doing something with it. We're bearing witness. We're using this information to really expose something that needs to be exposed and reformed. And so that helps. And then I also think what really helps too is to see the resilience of our sources. I mean, as Lisa was saying, we are not the ones being abused by police as we are reporting on it. But to see people who have continued on despite incredible challenges and difficulty and who are coming to you and sharing their experiences with you so that they can get their story out. So hopefully it will lead to reform. There's something incredibly powerful about that that just keeps you going despite how painful some of the material is. So so we talk through all of that and we work through all of that, and it's just so we're partners with the students and all of that, and I think that's how we all get through it together.
Yes, so I'm sure everyone has lots of questions, but yeah, I thank you so much for taking your time, all of you, in the IRP, and yeah, and thank you all for joining us either virtually or in person.